Watercolor is a beautifully unique medium with seemingly endless qualities to discover and experience. I love having a wider range of colors to choose from, but sometimes too many options can be more overwhelming than not having enough. So let's dial things back and focus on just a few colors today. In this video, we will be looking at a semi-opaque earthy triad of Naples yellow, cobalt turquoise, and terracotta. But before I get into the specifics about these three colors, let's talk about the foundation for this new series. I love the 48 color studio palette that I put together last year and shared with you over the course of several videos. However, I hope it goes without saying that while I love having these options to choose from, I never use that many colors in a single painting, not even close. I have fallen in love with a wide assortment of pigments that I enjoy seeing come alive on the paper. However, to create a harmonious painting, it's beneficial to limit the number of colors on the paper at any given time. Thus, welcome to the new limited palette series, or if you prefer, you can call it the 2 to 3 color challenge series. But once a month, we will be exploring 2 to 3 colors and how they work together as a tiny limited palette. When learning how to mix colors, it is most often recommended to start with a split primary palette that consists of warm and cool versions of yellow, red, and blue. There are dozens and dozens of videos here on YouTube and countless classes, including some of my own, about this more typical approach to a limited palette with the goal of color mixing. A lot of manufacturers even sell these pre-made mixing palettes as starter kits. For the widest range of color mixing with the least number of colors, this is the most versatile approach to a limited palette. However, it's not always the most exciting or inspiring, which is how we came to this series. Throughout art history, we can see limited palettes at work, such as Anders Zorn famously using yellow ochre, vermilion, ivory black, and white in what is now known as the Zorn palette, Pablo Picasso's iconic use of blue during his blue period, and David Hockney's modern use of bright, vivid colors. The use of these unique, limited palettes makes these art pieces memorable and instantly recognizable. Sometimes an artist's limited palette is determined by their own preferences. Other times it might be based on local or financial availability. Regardless, they all have much to teach us. We are starting off this series with an earthy take of the classic primary triad. While these colors don't match the primary yellow, blue, and red of grade school, or the printer-friendly primaries of yellow, cyan, and magenta, we do still have a color that fits into each of these roles, albeit much less saturated. The yellow in this triad is Naples yellow, namely a single pigment PBR24, though there are multi-pigment versions available as well. Chrome titanate oxide is a lightly valued, strongly tinting opaque earth yellow. The specific version that I'm using in this video is Da Vinci's Naples Yellow Deep, made from PBR24 and a bit of PY53. Some brands offer a multi-pigment blend called Naples Yellow that is often made more opaque with the use of a white pigment. For the purposes of this triad, as long as the hue is similar and you enjoy working with it, feel free to use whatever you have on hand if you'd like to join me in playing around with this triad. The blue in this palette is cobalt turquoise, made from PB36. There are several watercolor hues made from this pigment, but this triad is focusing on the deeper cobalt turquoise versions that lean a bit more towards green, not the soft cerulean blues or the brighter cobalt teals. Cobalt turquoise is a less intense blue that usually granulates. Finally, the red in this palette is a semi-opaque earth orange made from PR102 Terracotta by Da Vinci. This color is included in both my Embrace Opacity palette and the updated version of my Earth Friendly palette, and I love working with its velvety texture. However, the names for these PR101 and PR102 pigments can vary a lot, so if you don't have this specific version, you can substitute in any opaque, non-granulating earth orange with similar results. While I've been chatting away, you've been watching the color swatching and color mixing for this triad. At the top of the page, I started with the 3 colors straight from the pan, showing both a flat wash and a variegated wash. In the middle of the page, I taped off some squares in a grid, but this isn't the type of grid that you might be used to seeing in watercolor videos. We're not going to be mixing every color with every other color once, since it's only 3 colors. Instead, I wanted to show more variation within each color pairing. The first row combines Naples yellow and cobalt turquoise in 6 different mixing ratios, meaning there's more yellow in the mixes on the left and more turquoise in the mixes on the right. The second row pairs cobalt turquoise and terracotta, and our third row shares terracotta mixed with Naples yellow. Together, these swatches can give us an idea of what color mixes we can expect to use in our paintings. And at the bottom, I also included a little color wheel, but that's mainly just for the vibes. After the first layer was dry on my initial swatches, I went back a la the swatching style from my top 48 favorite colors videos to apply a second layer of paint. Once again, the swatch on the left has the flat wash, while the swatch on the right has a more variegated wash to show how these colors play with water. I know I've been moving a bit quickly throughout this video as we have a lot of ground to cover in this first of the series. I want to both let you know the intent and overall structure of these videos while also obviously highlighting the stars of the show in this specific triad, but before we jump onto the painting demos, let me share just a little bit more about my approach in creating the series. I have been interested in doing a limited palette series for a really long time, like years. I had a Google Doc that I would jot down notes in whenever inspiration struck, though unfortunately time is an extremely limited resource for me, but I am excited to finally be working on this project. Last month, after literally days of swatching and organizing color palettes by similar mixing hues, I posted a survey for my patrons to vote on their favorite color matchups based on the swatches alone. There were no color names, no brands, and no pigment numbers. Based on the results of that poll, I will be pulling a new color combo every month to explore. Some of these are my own favorite combinations, while some of them have been suggested by the community that I might be trying for the very first time. At the beginning of each month, that month's colors will be posted to Patreon as our community challenge for the month so that patrons can paint along and share resources with each other. Leading up to this video, patrons have been sharing their swatches, paintings, and even their photo reference boards with each other in the Discord server. I've been hard at work as well, and around the 3rd-ish week of each month, I plan on releasing a video here on YouTube to share what results I came up with as well. To kick things off for this first video, this month's colors were entirely inspired by the Patreon print and sticker for this month, which both heavily feature terracotta and cobalt turquoise light colors. If you'd like to join us for the challenges, they are available to all patrons at any tier, and if you'd like this month's artwork, physical rewards start at $14 a month. Alrighty, so we have our color swatches and our color mixes, but before we dive into a full painting, let's first get acquainted with these colors with a low pressure eye study, one of my favorites. Starting off with our lightest color, the Naples yellow, I am placing strokes of paint in the lightest areas of my reference image, and then softening off their edges. Once I have the skin texture started, I also drop in some of the terracotta to blend in with the yellow. I specifically chose this reference photo because of the strong yellows and blues in the iris. I really liked the separation and thought it was a good idea to show off these colors. Starting with the Naples yellow, I place a ring around the pupil, and while that is still wet, I follow up by placing cobalt turquoise around the outer edge of the iris. We'll add a lot more depth in future layers, but for now, we just want a nice base to work with. I am also using the blue as an underpainting for the eyebrow, which will eventually be a brown mixed from the cobalt turquoise and terracotta. After the first layer was dry, I wanted to bring in more of the turquoise to the study, so I placed them in areas of the reference that had the darkest shadows. Now is also a good time to mention some of my other supplies. I am going to be doing this series in one of the earlier runs of Etchr's Tan Cover Perfect sketchbooks, and by earlier, I mean like pre-pandemic. It was before they started regularly offering it for sale on their website. This one has cold-pressed Fabriano Artistico cotton paper, and I am painting with a size 6 Vinci Casaneo watercolor brush. As I continue through the study, I will be adding a lot of small little washes as I go and softening off the edges as needed. The browns are mostly going to be made with that PB36 and the PR102, occasionally adding a touch of yellow to the mix. This palette features opaque and semi-opaque colors, which I love, but they are admittedly not always the easiest to work with for several reasons. The most obvious difficulty is trying to avoid muddy mixes, which you will see later on in the full painting I wasn't entirely successful with. More subtly, when working with limited palettes, it's definitely important to make note of your limitations. At their darkest, none of these colors are deeply valued. Therefore, we cannot make a deep black. However, something that I'm really excited to play with throughout this series is relative color. At the end of this little segment, I will include a scan of the finished eye study, and while the pupil isn't black, we do get enough of a dark color to read as near black within the context of the piece. So the idea for this series overall is going to be color swatching, color mixing, a little study, and a big study. But as you will soon come to see, this first larger painting got a bit away from me. So this video has 2 big studies in it, so buckle in. I love me a good earthy triad, and this one specifically reminded me of the Australian outback. We have deep earthy orange reds, soft yellows, rich browns, gentle blues, and muted greens. I do want the Aussies to know that I fully considered a wide array of less stereotypical fauna, but I kept coming back to a kangaroo for this particular palette. Forgive me. Now let me tell you what I should have done. I should have done the color thumbnail studies that I told myself I was going to do before I started this painting, especially with a limited palette that I am filming. It is extremely beneficial to go into a painting with a plan, but I was too excited to slow down and I just went in with nothing but my mind's eye to guide me. Look, we love and appreciate her, but she's just not always reliable, okay? I'm sorry, it's just facts. Instead, I went straight in with diluted cobalt turquoise on a 1/2-inch flat silver black velvet brush for the background. So far we're good, great, no notes. I added some Naples yellow for the grasses and things are still going well enough. On the second layer, I started with a couple of isolated color washes, but then I quickly slip into color mixing mode and the opaque mixed browns really got out of hand quickly. We're back to the Casaneo brush, which many of you might have already noted is not my usual brush. Along with Mind's Eye, excited about all the things brain, has good intentions. She's so optimistic, so ambitious. But sometimes it behooves us to take a minute and say to ourselves, maybe now is not the time when you are recording a new series with a specific color palette on a specific deadline to use new paper that you are not really familiar with and new brushes. It's just a lot of new things. The main difference between this brush and the silver black velvet I normally use is that this one does not have as fine of a tip, so it forces me to be looser with my washes. In that regard, mission accomplished. It's good. That was what I intended. But I probably could have benefited from a little bit more control in my comfort zone for all of these new elements. The entire lower right quadrant is an unhinged disaster. There's no other way to say that. I'm sparing you the absolute struggle fest that was me struggling with both the paint and the paper for a while, but at one point, I kid you not, I may as well have just poured water on the paper for how much water I put on it to scrub off the paint. Crisis averted, we're fine, it handled it, but you know, it's seen better days. The things I liked about this study: if you cut the paper on a diagonal from the bottom left to the top right, I am good with the top triangle. I like it. It's fine. We kept the background washes nice and light. I really like the brush strokes, and for someone who hates backgrounds, the negative painting between the blue-green area and the light yellows on the left side of the painting are as good as we can expect from ourselves, let's just be honest. The face has a nice softness to it that is really endearing, so overall, as a sketch, I'm pretty pleased. Now, I could have stopped the video here. I probably should have, if we're being honest, but I had a vision that I wanted to share because I felt like this limited palette deserved it. Spoiler alert, this one also doesn't come out super well, but it's extremely different, so I at least thought it was worth sharing so that you can see a wider range of uses for this palette. So you remember those color thumbnails I said I should do, but didn't do? Well, I finally did them. I had taken a picture of the sketch before I started painting because I knew there was a very good chance I was gonna mess it up. See, foresight. I brought it into Clip Studio Paint and slapped some rough colors on it so we could get an idea of what we're working with. First, I painted the colors all on one layer just to get the right vibes going, and then I broke them up into 3 different layers, yellow, orange, and blue, so that I would have a practical game plan when it came to putting actual layers on my watercolor paper. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think many of my viewers are interested in digital things, so I'm breezing through this pretty quickly. However, if you would like to know more about using digital mockups for your paintings, let me know and I will add it to my list for future videos. After I had the process properly planned out, I printed off my original sketch and transferred it using graphite transfer paper. After the main points of reference were noted, I went back over it with an actual pencil to get a better feel for the original sketch. Then we clean the palette, start fresh, and we're ready for round 2. So just as we did in the digital mockups, we're going to paint this in 3 layers, 1 for each color. There isn't a lot to narrate in the early stages of this painting that are different from our previous paintings, so I will be back in a few minutes to talk about what happens when it comes time to filling in the gaps between our layers. Once all 3 layers are in, it's time to unify them a bit better and begin adding our details. You can see here with the tips of the ears, I still wasn't entirely sure whether or not I wanted to include the mixed brown hues for this painting, but I quickly abandoned that idea and went back to the more pure individual paint colors. There may be a touch of one color added to another to soften the saturation, but for the most part, they'll read as blue, orange, and yellow. Towards the end, I decided to add in some of the rich browns, which continued to be a mistake for this particular version of the painting. The warm browns are absolutely beautiful. They're stunning, and I know that's why I included them. And I do need to remind myself to use these mixes in future paintings. However, because I hadn't been using the brown up to this point, it really ends up looking out of place in the final piece. Finally, I add some white highlights as per usual. I think it could have been done without the finer hairs around the eyes. I went a little bit overboard, as some people tend to do with white highlights, but I'm really happy with how the ears turned out and the little highlights in the eyes. Overall, I am most pleased with the better execution of the details, like the eyes and the ears, as well as the subtle shading in the lighter areas like the arm. These two pieces look nothing alike, and it really shows how much our approach, mindset, and supplies can impact the overall outcome of a piece of artwork. Neither of these kangaroos are what I had hoped for when I set out to create this video, but there are some really nice moments in each that I want to point out. From the first piece, I'd love to take the negative painted grasses on the left side of the painting, the flat brushstrokes in the background that kind of nicely frame our image, the softness of the facial features, and the overall palette cohesion so that we can see a range of mixes with this limited palette. From the second piece, I really like the layer definition where the orange and the yellow meet on the body, as well as the more delicate treatment of the washes overall. I do like that we can see more of the pure color, particularly with the turquoise and the shadows. That was always my intent. It got away from me really fast in the first one. I think I could have incorporated both these pure pan colors and the mixes in a single painting. I just didn't execute it properly here. Third time's a charm, right? Well, we're not going to be doing that in today's video, but I do very much hope that you enjoyed this look at a niche limited color palette, and I hope you're excited to see more. I'd love to hear what you think about these colors and which kangaroo you ended up preferring better. Are there any standout mixes that caught your eye that you'd also like to explore at home as well? I would also love to see what you come up with too, so if you'd like to join us on Patreon, we'd love to have you in our monthly community challenge discussions. It's really warmed my heart to see so much chatting in the Discord lately. Thank you so much to my patrons for helping to support me and the channel, to everyone here for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Until then, happy painting.